Executive functions are cognitive skills that enable a child to regulate thinking, feeling, and behavior. Without these skills, learning becomes very, very difficult. In this video, we're going to talk about 8 common ways that students struggle with executive function abilities, and then how we identify which executive function your specific student might be struggling with. So, when a student is struggling with executive functions, you often hear things like, I have to teach him multiple times and he still doesn't remember. Or, she has difficulty with transitions between activities. Or maybe, once he gets started, he's fine, but if you try to get him to do something else, he gets upset. So there are 8 primary ways that students struggle. Number 1, planning and organization. This is the ability of a student to maintain order in their own personal space and take care of their personal belongings and schoolwork. It also involves organizing and grouping information cognitively. When we see breakdowns here, we see students that may actually know the content, but they're not turning it on time, or their work isn't organized, so it affects their work. Number 2, working memory. This is a dynamic process that involves reviewing new information and retrieving or holding or manipulating stored information in our minds at the same time. So we need to do both to be able to complete some cognitive tasks. An example is math. Oftentimes, we hear a portion of the problem and we have to put that upstairs and think about that while we're figuring out other portions of the math problem and then put it together. Initiation. The ability to begin a task or activity and then independently generate ideas, responses, and problem-solving strategies. I think even as adults, we sometimes struggle with this initiation or this barrier to begin. Some students never begin and can't actually get up and running. Initiation is a good example of how a student might be struggling with executive function, but it's not actually a cognitive or an academic issue. When they do the task, they can't do it, but they're just unable to get started. Number 4, task monitoring. The ability of a student to monitor their own performance and to measure it against a standard for the given task. So you see this, a student who gets working and their head's down on a test and the bell rings and they're absolutely shocked because they're only on problem 2 or 3 of 8 and didn't know that the task they should have been going on further. Number 5, self-monitoring. The ability to observe one's own behavior and to determine whether it conforms to the behavior expectations of unwritten social rules. So we see this often when a child transitions from one location to the other. Maybe they're out on the playground and they're doing WrestleMania or who knows what with their friends, and everyone comes in the classroom and most students are ready to transition and learn. And our student might bring what was going on in recess or in the lunchroom back into the classroom, or vice versa. Number 6, inhibition. The ability to put on the brakes or to stop behaviors at the appropriate time. This is opposite of initiation, but some students, once they get going on something, they don't want to stop. Or if they're doing something or joking around, they don't understand that the joke or the idea behind it should be curtailed within a couple minutes, and they just don't stop doing it. Number 7, emotional control. The ability for a student to reflect on their own feelings and then use that understanding to guide their emotional responses. So we see this often if there's a mismatch between how upset a child is versus what was going on. And this can happen both ways, that it's something we perceive of as trivial and there's an explosion, or they do something like hurt someone else and there's absolutely no response to it. So that is a lack of emotional control. Shifting. Number 8, this is the ability to change gears, moving freely from one situation to the other, having flexibility in your thinking, ability to respond appropriately to a new situation or when there's an unexpected situation. Great example of this is children who can't handle substitute teachers or field trips, or when things are out of the ordinary. So a lot of times these executive functions can look like abilities or difficulties we have as adults. So what's the difference between us not being able to start or do our work when we don't want to and a child with executive function difficulties? It comes down to the word strategies. So if I don't want to do some work, let's say I don't want to write a report that I have to, I'll put some strategies in place. I'll put on music I like, I'll shorten the time frame, maybe I'll give myself a reward, Maybe I'll wait till tomorrow morning when I'm fresh to be able to get that done. Maybe I will wait till I procrastinate long enough so that I have extra anxiety to make me do it. Regardless, I've put strategies in place to make this happen. It's the ability to access these strategies that leads to the executive function disorder. So how do we figure out which ones our students are struggling with? The best way is to survey teachers about what they're seeing. I put together an executive function checklist that I emailed to teachers so that I know exactly what my students are struggling with. That can be downloaded below this video on slpimpact.com. Or you can come up with your own checklist to ask about the behaviors and the routines that are being disrupted in the classroom. That's it. Thank you for listening.